The Steam Deck is a great piece of hardware that can do a lot of stuff. You can play games in really high graphical fidelity. It's essentially a mini PC, which can give you the flexibility of doing things your PC can do, but on the go. It has access to the wide variety of games on Steam, as well as the ability to play just about any game that exists through emulation. It's a really nice piece of kit. Plenty of videos have been made over the internet on how the Steam Deck renders the Switch obsolete. It has been dubbed by some as the Switch killer. Many of these videos are from a few years ago when the Steam Deck first released. It's quite obvious these videos haven't aged well, as the Switch has gone on to be arguably the most successful gaming console ever made, while the Steam Deck is yet to surpass 5 million in sales. There's good reasons for this. Despite the enthusiasm of the emulation community for the Steam Deck, it really never stood a chance of being a competitor to the Switch. For starters, as the Emperor has no clothes, the Steam Deck has no games. Now, people are already going to respond, what do you mean it has no games? It has every game, including games on the Switch. And they're right. It does have all those games, if you pirate them. The emulation community is a niche community. Casual gamers aren't going to be interested in mining the dark web for ROMs, emulators, and BIOS. They want things just to work without jumping through a lot of hoops. Going on to shady websites to download things doesn't beat popping your cartridge or your disc into your console, turning it on, and playing your games. The Steam Deck needs to have games native to that platform like Mario Wonder to the Switch. Steam Deck doesn't really have any of these games, so it's not going to be as appealing like the Switch or the PS5. Also, people understand if you don't support the people who make the games, they won't make games anymore. It's kind of funny that people complain about game studios being shut down while they have a huge library of pirated games. This is sort of a continuation of the first point, but it's important to point out the Steam Deck's greatest and probably its only selling point is emulation. Take away the ability to emulate any game and no one would buy these. Videos on the Steam Deck around the time it was released were all about bragging about how you can play Switch games on the Steam Deck and have them run better. What you notice about these videos, they don't say anything about all the great games available on Steam. When I talk about games, I'm talking about games which are exclusive to that system. You can play games like Mortal Kombat 1 or Street Fighter 6 on your Steam Deck due to them being available on Steam, but those aren't exclusives. As I've said and what I'll continue to say because it's the truth, you can't sell game boxes without banger exclusives. The Steam Deck has none. Battery life is important, and Steam Deck's battery life isn't very good. The original Game Boy dog-walked the drastically more powerful Game Gear, Atari Lynx, and Sega Nomad. All three of those could play games in full color and had better graphics, but the battery life for all those systems sucked. If your handheld's battery life is bad, at worst, you have a paperweight, and at best, you have a mobile gaming device, which isn't that mobile. The Game Boy won because it had better games, but it's also because the drawbacks in graphical fidelity provided significantly better battery life. Many brag on how the Steam Deck can play Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild in much higher graphical fidelity. They never go into details about battery life. You can adjust the resolution and frame rate for better battery life, but if you're going to brag about playing Zelda in 4K 120 frames per second, you shouldn't have to nerf settings in order to play for longer than 30 minutes. There are plenty of videos of people overclocking the Switch and running Zelda at higher frame rates, but they note this is at the cost of battery life and stability. Nintendo knew this, just like they knew it with the Game Boy. and they set their limits intentionally. The most important part of any great gameplay experience is the ability to actually play. Another point is the price, or more specifically, the cost of ownership. Currently, the lowest variant for the Steam Deck is $400. This is only $50 more than the Switch OLED for a significantly more powerful and more capable device. The issue would be if you're looking to emulate games or you want to play games like Street Fighter 6, Call of Duty, Baldur's Gate 3, or FF7 Remake. The amount of space for the base model Steam Deck is going to fill up pretty quickly. There are options for more storage, but they aren't free. And depending on what quality storage you're looking for and how much storage you need, this can increase the cost of ownership by $100 or more to have adequate storage for your games. It can also be difficult to implement for the non-tech savvy consumer if you want to go the SSD route. The battery life issue can be remedied with power banks, but again, that's more money, which increases the cost of ownership. The Switch OLED solves the battery life and storage problem with no need to buy anything extra other than the game cartridge. A big selling point for any product is convenience and ease of use. The less hoops you have to go through to enjoy your product, the better. There's also the fact that the Steam Deck is not being sold worldwide, even though they are being sold in the United States, Canada, Europe, and Japan. Those are the biggest markets for technology. There's not really going to be tens of millions of sales in Singapore and Indonesia. So I don't think it being sold everywhere in the world is going to change its commercial fate. I always saw the Steam Deck as an emulation machine, and the way people talk about it substantiates that label. It has its place in the market and is not a bad product by any means, but it's not really in a place to compete with the Switch at all. And the head of Valve said that the Steam Deck wasn't really meant to compete with the Switch. You can sort of see the Steam Deck as an extension of your PC. Kind of like how the PS Portal was an extension of the PS5. It wasn't really a standalone handheld. I mean, you can't really play any games on it. It's just kind of projecting what's on your PS5 onto a handheld machine. So that's sort of how you can look at the Steam Deck. It's got a good niche place in the market, but it's probably not going to be anywhere on the Switch's level.